Great to be here. A couple of housekeeping items, if I may. First, the work and the technology we're about to share with you started in about 2009 or so. It's been funded and supported by investors and such, but also generously from DARPA and NIH. But it has not been cleared or has not received regulatory clearance yet. We expect that to happen very, very, very soon in Europe. But as of now, it's an investigative use only device. But we think it's important enough for us to actually share that with you because we believe that this technology really is filling the gap and solves a barrier for digital health and personalized medicine, kind of why we're here for that vision to come to reality. We're Profusa, and we have a technology that provides continuous, long-term, non-invasive data gathering for real-time measurement of key biochemistries inside the body. I have a couple of colleagues on stage here that's going to be helping me demonstrate this technology, Kit and Bill. They're going to be doing a lot of stuff that's really weird. Just kind of don't mind them. In the background, they have sensors inside them, and we're keeping track of their tissue oxygen level in real time. And at the end of some introduction slides on why this is a big deal and how it works, we'll take a look at their data in real time. So with that, as I mentioned, we have a technology that measures real-time biochemistry. And that real-time biochemistry is measured in a way where data acquisition is non-invasive. So think about things that you could only get right now, or data you can only get right now by either a blood test or some large capital equipment hospital visit. We're able to do that in real time and actually in a comfort of the home environment. And why is that a big deal? Well, we think it's a big deal because, listen, everything around us is digitized today, right? We're living in the middle of an on-demand economy in which how we work, how we learn, how we play are absolutely impacted by the ability for us in real time to be able to access real-time information that forces us or actually enables us to make decisions to be more productive, to buy smarter, to play harder and smarter. And yet that sort of incredibly significant stepwise change in our lifestyles, impacted and enabled by technology, really has not drawn a parallel analogy to healthcare, to what really ought to be very important to us. We digitize everything outside of our body, but a big reservoir of information and data, our biochemistry, which is the root cause or the effect, if you will, of how healthy we are not digitized whatsoever. You want to know how your biochemistry is doing? You still have to go get a blood drawn. You still have to go see a hospital, go to a hospital and see a doctor. But that said, we're here at this wonderful conference because we all believe in the vision that digital health, that one day we ought to be able to enjoy for our benefit real-time monitoring of how we are at home so that our doctors could treat us better, we can manage our disease and our health much more efficiently. It's a vision that's shared by many companies. It's a vision that's shared by many innovators. And it's truly one of the areas in which we're so fortunate, or feel so fortunate that we could be part of, because we're building off the shoulders of giants. And yet, I think the opportunity for us to actually improve and develop a technology to really fulfill that vision of real-time biochemistry at the fingertips of your hands really requires three key performance metrics that have not been accomplished together in one package yet. One is that the data you generate has to be data that you could trust. And we look at that bar in two ways. One, the data needs to be gotten in a way, or the quality of data needs to be high enough where a physician or individual can make a therapeutic or medical decision. I think that's really, really important. And secondly, we ought to measure things that physicians are already used to looking at today. So what we're doing is we're actually just getting that information in real time. That's an important one because it shortens the time for clinical validation. And so if we can actually provide lactate or blood gases or blood sugar levels, these are things that physicians are already used to looking at. We don't have to actually do a huge body of clinical trials to prove its clinical relevancy. The second is the experience needs to be absolutely seamless. You have really high quality of data, but adoption will not be there unless the person who's actually using that device to take the measurement has zero incremental burden or very little incremental burden in their own workflow, how they manage their life. Which means that if your use case is that I only see my doctor once a year, then whatever sensor and technology that we develop to be able to give you that information should only require physician intervention, if you will, once a year, which means that sensor ought to last for at least 1 year. And if it's a device for a condition where you see your doctor once every 3 months, then the same thing. The sensor needs to last for at least 3 months. And then lastly, the technology needs to be accessible. Adoption cannot be possible if the device costs tens of thousands of dollars. Adoption is only possible if the device is actually accessible from a cost point of view, but also from an institutional point of view, it can be adopted without a large capital equipment investment. And we think if you do all three of those things well in one technology package, then the future and the power of digital health really can come to fruition. And unfortunately, we think that's a bar that has not quite been accomplished yet until today. So this is our solution. I put examples on everybody's table, I think. These little vials, these are proxy sensors that you see in the little vial, and it's there to just give you a sense of how small these sensors are. It's a little material that we put inside the subcutaneous space of the skin. The placement of that little material is no more invasive than actually getting a vaccine or getting a vial of blood drawn. Once that little material is placed under the surface of the skin, it actually stays there. And it's the little sliver inside there has an inert material, and it's embedded with fluorescence chemistry. So that fluorescence chemistry basically is inside the body. It's just kind of there. And it's reacting to the analyte of interest very passively. And when you actually want to take a measurement, then what you need to do, because it's fluorescence, you have a reader on the surface of the skin that shines a pulse of excitation light, excites a fluorophore, the fluorophore emits an emission light, the photodetector on the surface then actually kind of take a measurement of the light coming through, does a calculation, and gives you a concentration of an analyte of interest. Very, very simple way of working. So the data acquisition is completely non-invasive. And the big, big innovation here that we're very excited about is that little sliver of hydrogel, it's devoid of electronics, no batteries and such, it's just passive material. And it has overcome, or it's overcoming the effect of something that's been plaguing this industry for about 4 decades, which is the foreign body response. Any of us who has ever gotten a splinter in our hands will know, right? Getting a splinter, it hurts, and your body tries to get rid of it and put scar tissue around it if it can. For knee replacements, for hip joints, that's all fine, having scar tissue around those implants. But if you want a biochemical sensor, that's actually a death sentence for that sensor. Because now you're trying to ask that sensor to sense something that's in the scar tissue and not the body. It's like asking a blind person to read Braille with gloves on. It's very, very tough to do. The little sliver of material that we put inside the body actually has overcome that effect. So we have sensors that have been put in the body and has worked for more than 2 years and still functions, compared to best-in-class sensors that dwell within the body that maybe work for a couple of weeks or so. And so this is an example of one of the sensors inside a healthy volunteer in one of our clinical studies. This particular sensor here, the picture is taken by red light with an infrared filter taken out of a camera. You can't see it visually like this. You can't see it actually unless you go to a really cool party where the light is kind of funky. We don't do that very often. And then this is the reader actually on the surface of the skin that we read. Okay, you can stop now. Yeah. Triathlete. You can stop now, really. And then so we have a sensor now, right, that can stay inside the body, measure for months, if not years. And the resolution, because every time you interrogate is done by light, the resolution could be as frequently as half a second to a second or so. And the application really, at that point, then becomes endless. From individual chronic disease management all the way through, imagine the ability to digitize your biochemistry and digitize it in a way that is searchable, it's collatable, and the information that's the insight that could be gotten is the same as actually digitizing your external world, but do so in a body of information that's much, much more valuable, which is your own personal biochemistry. So with that, can we get the real data up on the screen? Can we give Kit a hand here? What a champ. What a champ. By the way, we had rehearsals earlier today, and she's done this like 4 times already. That's why. Usually she's in much better shape. So Bill, why don't we share with the audience what we're seeing on stage here?
Sure. I have a sensor in my arm. This is a little reader. Kit has a sensor in her leg off to the side of her thigh, same kind of reader. It's been transmitting data from this embedded oxygen sensor that Ben described every second. And this is a trace of this real-time data that Kit generated from her sensor. This first part here was a low to medium effort. And what you see is kind of a combination of respiratory delivery of oxygen with metabolic consumption in her system as she strived through her cycling. And then when she went to basically almost an anaerobic attempt, you could see the oxygen just went down very quickly as her respiratory function wasn't keeping up with the oxygen demand in her thigh muscle. And then she slowed down and she rested. And it continued to go down because there was a little bit of a deficit, but as she rested more, her heart and lungs obviously didn't stop. And now you can see an overshoot of oxygen as it's being delivered to the vasculature in her thigh. So.
And you know, so this particular sensor measures oxygen dissolved in interstitial fluid that's available for muscle. And you can see the sensor is still actually working. So you know, it's continuing to gather data in the back as her tissue recovers and the body's trying to get to a new baseline. But I think what's important here is not necessarily the fact that we have a sensor that measures oxygen really, really well. These sensors have been inside Kit now and Bill for more than 6 months. They were placed in there December 8th of last year, and they continue to function beautifully. But what's important here is that you actually have a sensor now. You have a way of delivering a sensing modality inside the body where data acquisition can be real time, of clinical grade and quality, and be able to measure important analytes depending on the application you actually want. So there are great clinical applications for this, both in terms of exercise and wound healing and diabetic foot. But imagine that we have a sensor like this in our product pipeline that we're developing, where it measures glucose and lactate and blood gases and CO2, et cetera. I think the suite of those products and those sensors really enables kind of the last panel I was talking about, right? Physicians trusting data to be able to make judgment on it. We think we have a way of actually being able to do that and have a shot at mass adoption of a sensor technology like this. With that, thank you very much for your time and attention.